So starting this video, we are using Boxcutter 719.6, which is the last release, and we're also using 2.83.18, which is an older LTS, just for demonstration purposes. And I'm just going to look at this from front view, press D, and change over to Ngon, and just click and drag, and then from here, just click to drop points. And from here, I can just right click in order to stop this shape. And now we're in this pause mode. So now that we're in this pause mode, I can of course click and drag to translate points. However, one of the focal things of the Boxcutter 719.6 release was the ability to use middle mouse button in order to bevel points. However, one of the limitations is that the first bevel that we do will set the pace for the rest of the beveling that's being done. So we see that now that I've beveled this point, that this particular point, whenever I attempt to bevel it, is only able to go as far as this point was. And same thing whenever I attempt to bevel this should be able to go a lot further. However, it's limited due to us first beveling this. In addition, whenever you extrude the shape, you're no longer able to use the middle mouse button in order to adjust the bevel. Even if we were to bring the shape back into a 2D point, we're still not able to use the middle mouse button in order to adjust the bevel on this. So this is something that was a bit of a limitation and something that we sought to resolve. So now that we've went over what's going on in Boxcutter 719.6, let's minimize this, where we now have Blender 3.0 and we're using the latest release 719.7. From here we can press D and jump over to Ngon, and I'm going to look at it in front view, and first I'm just going to click and drag to create the first line, and then release left mouse click and move my mouse, click, 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 and then click to set my last point, and then right click in order to drop it. From here, we're going to do the same thing as before. I'm just going to bevel this simple point, this single point, and we see that, it's a very slight bevel. But notice now that whenever I bevel other points, that I'm able to bevel it outside of the range of what was specified here, which is a massive improvement compared to before. And we're still able to adjust these to be as large or as small as needed, expanding far beyond the limitations that were set at the very beginning, just showing that bevel is a lot more versatile. And the best part is that if we were to extrude this shape, we can still use middle mouse button or shift and left mouse button in order to lessen the amount of weight and adjust this inside of extrude. Another thing also worthy of mention is that if we just begin adjusting our bevel and we begin meeting the other edges, we see that there's like this kind of dynamic effect where it attempts to make these weights work together. So we are doing some improvements in that regard as far as getting these things to play together, but just want to show that now extruded points are able to be beveled, in addition to being able to adjust your subsequent beveling far beyond the initial points. Another improvement that was had with Ngon points is this relationship with the mirror. So here we are using the previous version of Boxcutter 719.6, and I'm just going to draw a simple shape. And once we have this in a pause state, I can press 1 in order to activate mirror. However, I can also press Shift 1 in order to flip which side is mirrored. So here we see that when I press 1, I mirrored this side, which I don't want, so I press Shift 1. I'm going to mirror and keep this side and mirror to the other side. But we also see that in addition to mirroring it, that the points are being shown for the other mirrored side, even though this side isn't actually capable of having these points modified. And we could see that in action whenever I attempt to move these points, that it exposes a bug, because these points are simply not real. So if we press 1, we see that we have ruined this shape beyond recognition. However, we can attempt to rebuild it back using point translation, maybe to something like that. And here we see that when we mirror, there are no points showing. But if we were to say press G, maybe then press 1, we see that we have a couple of points actually showing for the other side, but moving them on the mirrored side don't actually do anything. So it's just a bug, if anything. So this is something that we did resolve in this latest update. So just to show this from front view, I know this can be a little confusing, but it's just something that kind of irked me. So here we have our shape drawn. If we press 1, we see that we've mirrored on the x-axis. However, we drew this on the y-axis, so that means that I have to press 2 in order to mirror on the y. The dots that are being displayed are the dots for the actual shape and not for the mirror instance. So even though I'm modifying it on the other side, you can't really see much happening because this is on the other side of a mirrored object that's being modified by a bisect mirror. We are actually modifying this accurate to what the shape actually is, instead of before where we were showing fake points that weren't actually correct in the situation. So just a small bug, but it's been resolved for this update.